On the drop, it is 9 o'clock, and we are back in the chairs yet again. Good morning, everybody. Paul Ihander with you. Max Goren is back. 2 on this Thursday. Not as nice as it was yesterday. I don't like talking about the weather like right out of the gate, but, you know, my lawn is bone dry. Your lawn is bone dry, and you can't water, you can't wash your car in front of your house anymore. I guess it depends on where you live, but we're all fighting the same fight, right? The drops of water fall from the sky. We call that rain. And then someone will say, what kind of gibberish you talking about? Haven't seen that around here in a while. At least some of us haven't. Anyway, let's deal in fact, shall we? Beyond that, yesterday the NHL's coaching carousel just decided to settle in real nice. Very simply, the NHL decided to fill a couple of its openings. So John Tortorella's out and is probably going to go back onto the coach for hire list late in the season as a replacement kind of thing. And no word if he's come back to Raleigh yet to pick up his suits and unmentionables. The Toronto Maple Leafs hired their coach, Tim Hiller. The Vegas Golden Knights hired their coach in Ryan Craig, essentially a promotion from the AHL. And then also, the Washington Capitals extended Spencer Carberry after 3 seasons. He's going to stay in Washington, so a Canes foe has re-geared up. And Andre Trigny in Utah with the Mammoth season, he got an extension as well. So the NHL coaching situation settling in as the player situation starts to get stirred up. Those are facts, right? The other fact is we have a parade to get prepared for. And that championship parade will be heard right here on 99.9 The Fan. Everyone is excited about this. There's no doubt about it. They're expecting 100,000 minimum heading into downtown Raleigh, along Fayetteville Street, along Hillsborough Street, to watch whatever it is that goes by, whether it's horse-drawn buggies or buses or limousines with the windows cracked or whatever it happens to be. There is a Stanley Cup Championship Parade. Our pre-parade broadcast will start at 10 o'clock. We are on Hillsborough Street with a really nice spot. Tim Donnelly, Dennis Cox, Adam Gold will all be there for you, along with the rest of the cast of characters of 99.9 The Fan. You'll have parade updates, you'll hear from fans, and then we'll have the main stage speeches and whatnot. And that coverage here on The Fan is brought to you by Parkway Sleep Health Centers in Cary. Sound sleep, sound health. Coverage starts at 10. Our programming on Saturday starts at 9 o'clock. We'll have a replay of our Canes Corner Live event that we had with Brandon Bussey during the Olympic break. That seems like forever ago, right? Back in February. And it was right before, actually, he signed his extension. So he hadn't signed his extension when he talked jovially about the Carolina Hurricanes with Mike Maniscalco. So we'll have that for you Saturday morning prior to our parade coverage, which will last early into the afternoon, and hopefully you all play safe and you've already kind of figured out where you want to sit. Do we know if there's any chairs set out there at this point? Anyone's taped off anything along the sidewalks?
I think people are already setting up spots.
They should be.
2 days in advance.
I would be at this point. I would be camping out. If this is your bit, now I know today is supposed to be like a really, again, we opened up with the weather, right? Like it's supposed to feel like 105 this afternoon, which is just, and then the rain and the whatever storms are supposed to, allegedly, that's what they tell us. They tell us this to get our hopes up. They tell you that the Carolina Hurricanes will contend for a Stanley Cup prior to the season to get your hopes up. The good news is your hopes were not let down. But the fun part about this is we get to play what if. There's a lot of what ifs, and we've talked about a lot of the players and the movement and the signings and the free agency and whatnot that came along with the Carolina Hurricanes ride to this point. But let's play a role game. Some of you like to role play, right? Think clean thoughts. Some of you like to play role games. And so I thought this would be an interesting exercise. And because Max is here, I think it's a really cool exercise. And I think those of you could think about this too as you're driving in. Just one of those thought things that you can kind of guide your way through, because a lot of you became Carolina Hurricanes fans towards the end of the season. Your interest in this group, and I have seen people, by the way, that absolutely said, I've tried to get into hockey, I tried to get into the Stanley Cup, and it still just doesn't do anything for me. And that's okay. That's totally okay. So maybe this isn't exactly for you, this little exercise we're about to do. But I want to do some role play here. And imagine the multiverse, and I love doing this. Imagine the multiverse where the Carolina Hurricanes were placed in the Western Conference bracket and had to face the same route as the Vegas Golden Knights. Would this still be a Stanley Cup winning team? Because you have been told, and you were told this yesterday, and I probably should have pulled the audio, the Tkachuk brothers, Brady, who decided to throw hands against the Conn Smythe winning captain of your Canes, Jordan Stahl, and Matthew Tkachuk have a podcast. And yesterday they were talking about the finals, and, well, it was mostly Matthew, to be honest. Brady does not speak very much during this podcast. It should say the Matthew and Brady Tkachuk podcast. Matthew was talking about a couple of things. One was talking about Rod Brindamore's legacy in some very general terms, but was very complimentary. But Matthew, who happens to play for the Florida Panthers, says that the Canes had an easy route. And you've heard this time and time again. This easy, simple route through the Stanley Cup playoffs, which is what you're supposed to do when you have the best record in your conference. You are supposed to have the simpler route. You should not have to fight the gauntlet for the most part, at least how the current NHL playoff system is laid out. But you've heard it again. I heard it again. In the last 24 hours, a current NHL player said the Carolina Hurricanes had the easiest route to the Stanley Cup final. And so, let's have ourselves an exercise, shall we? If the Carolina Hurricanes had to run the gauntlet that the Vegas Golden Knights had to run, is this still a Stanley Cup winning team? And so, as I mentioned, Andre Trini, the head coach of the Utah Mammoth, was the first team that the Vegas Golden Knights faced in the playoffs. The Utah Mammoth took them to a 6-game series. Remember, this was a 6-game series. Utah Mammoth, Clayton Keller, their captain, playing at the Delta Center, all the good vibes. Like every last bit of good vibe that came along with the Utah Mammoth was absolutely on display. And so if the Carolina Hurricanes went against the Utah Mammoth in the first round, is this still the same kind of play? Remember back in January, I think it was the end of January, they played them here and lost. But it was a 5-4 loss. Is this the same kind of thing? And then they lost to them again at the end of when the Hurricanes weren't even playing meaningful hockey, lost to the Canes again 4-1 in April.
Yeah, and Utah should have won that game at Lenovo Center too. That's the one where it was Whalers night. Hurricanes came back from down 2 goals late and actually won in regulation with 3 late goals at the end of the third period. Utah was a good team this year. I know that that franchise has not had the best track record over the last couple of years, and I guess it depends whether you consider it the same quote-unquote franchise. I know there's a whole thing about who gets the franchise history when teams relocate like that, and technically it's a new team, but like we all know, they came from the Arizona Coyotes, and
Jordan Martinook, veteran of the Arizona Coyotes,
and that team, struggled to make the postseason and struggled to have any sort of meaningful success. And now, after a couple of years in Utah, they're kind of finding their footing finally, and they have actually a really nice young core, a lot of great young players. Clayton Keller as the captain.
Yep, Keller's a superstar.
Has been a pretty consistently good player, but they've got guys coming up like Dylan Guenther.
He had 40 goals.
Logan Cooley. Mikhail Sergachev has carved out a really nice role as their top defenseman and their power play quarterback. I mean, they're a really good team.
Would you have seen a 6-game series with them and the Canes coming out on top just based on the history of these teams?
I think probably Carolina would have won that in 5 games. To me, because
you have home ice.
Is not too dissimilar to any of their games or any of their series that they would have played in the Eastern Conference against the opponents they did have. I mean, the whole path thing is kind of silly to me, especially because, if you go back 2 months, felt like most pundits were picking Ottawa as like the hot upset pick.
Every team that the Canes faced was going to upset
not
the Canes.
Philadelphia. I don't want to get revisionist because I feel like a lot of Canes fans online kind of have
not a big fan of Danny Vladar.
They have the us against the world mentality. It's like, oh, everyone was picking, and they were picking Philadelphia to beat us too. It's like, no, people were not picking Philadelphia to beat the Hurricanes. That's the one where everyone kind of knew that Carolina was going to win that one. But Ottawa, though, that was the case. There were a lot of upset picks there, but I mean, Utah was a very good team. I don't want to discredit them.
They scored a ton of goals against the Knights.
Oh yeah, and honestly, like that was one where I picked Utah to win that series in my NHL bracket. No, obviously they ended up coming through because Vegas continued to ride the Torts hot streak. But you get past that round, and then Vegas was facing Anaheim, and that was another kind of similar shtick where it's a young team, hadn't been great the last couple of years. They made a coaching change. Which I think kind of really helped springboard them. Not like end of the season like Vegas. It was before the season.
No, Joe Quenneville.
But that kind of helped springboard them. They were finally getting more out of their young, highly drafted talent. I think that probably would have been a little bit tougher of an opponent for Carolina compared to Philadelphia if we're just going 1-1 in terms of second-round opponents.
This is what we're doing. We're going 1-1. And Carolina defeated them in another one of those January games. 5-2. That was in our barn here. That was a 5-2 game, and then the second matchup with they didn't have a second. No, it was.
It would have been early.
It was also a loss. That was 4-1 as well.
Yeah, that's a West Coast trip early season if I've ever seen one. So I mean, look, if you're going 1-1 round by round.
Yeah, I would say I think the Ducks would have been a tougher matchup than Utah.
Yes,
absolutely.
Well, I was going to say at least in terms of over Philadelphia, definitely. But I would say first round. If you're comparing Ottawa and Utah, I think Ottawa, slight edge there. But again, Utah, talented young team. And then if you go to second round, I'd give the edge to Anaheim in terms of difficulty.
It's interesting, though, because remember, the Carolina Hurricanes swept their first two opponents in the Eastern Conference. What we're saying here is we don't believe they would have been able to sweep Utah or Anaheim.
I would agree with that. I think that would at least be a 5-game series against either one of those teams.
Okay, so, again, we're playing a little game here because that line came up, hey, easy path. So let's flip the script. Carolina facing the Vegas Crew. But we're figuring that Vegas had the tougher role. So now you go against the Colorado Avalanche. And remember, the same scenarios apply when it comes to the Avs and healthy. We're just assuming things will stay the same. Just the opponents are changing here. But now you're going up against the Colorado Avalanche.
If it was
in the Western Conference Final, it's the Carolina Hurricanes and the Colorado Avalanche, which could have easily been the Stanley Cup final this season. Instead of going to Las Vegas and hanging out in the Strip with Tiesto and it was Lil Jon, right? I think Lil Jon was like one of the pre-games. We're going instead of Vegas, we're going to Denver.
DJ Khaled, maybe.
DJ Khaled. Instead of Vegas, we're going to Denver and we're listening to the Fray and the Chainsmokers.
Yeah, somebody at Red Rocks.
Yeah. Anybody that played at Red Rocks.
But I mean, look, if it was the same Colorado that they were without Cale Makar for, was it game 1 and 2 or just game 1 of that series? I don't remember at this point.
I know, revisionist history.
Regardless, I think it was a shoulder for him, but he was injured, and that plays a huge factor when pretty much the consensus best defenseman in the world right now is not able to play or not able to be 100%. That has a big effect on the games. And then Nathan McKinnon got banged up in game 3 of that series where Vegas came back from the 3-0 deficit. Basically went from, kind of tightening up where it would have been 2-1 Vegas to it was 3-0 after they came back to win that game at home, and the series basically over because everybody knows coming back from a 3-0 deficit is tough. I mean, I don't know, a full health Montreal Canadiens team. It's a very, very good team this year, and also played really well against Carolina in the regular season. Now, obviously, Colorado was the President's Trophy winners. I think they got well into November before they had a regulation loss or before they had a second regulation loss.
These two teams split, by the way. Carolina and Colorado split in high-scoring games.
It was a great game, too, that first one they played in Colorado where the Canes lost like 3 guys to injury during the game.
It ended up being a shootout.
That was actually one of Frederik Andersen's best games of the regular season. Despite allowing 4 goals, he also faced 40-something shots in that game, and they went on to win in the shootout. And then I know the other game was right around the New Year where Colorado came in and won
5-3 is what it was.
That was one where
that was ugly.
Carolina gave up a lead in that game as well. That was when Frederik Andersen was kind of at the height of his struggles. I mean, look, I'm not going to argue that Montreal was a tougher opponent than the President's Trophy winning Colorado Avalanche. But when you factor in the injury situation, it's not as much of a disparity as you would think. Would Carolina be able to handle a healthy Colorado team in 5 games like they did against Montreal. I don't know necessarily about
but I want
that.
to think about the storylines that come along with facing the Colorado Avalanche.
If you're
with
the former players,
you've got
of course.
the former players with Marty Necas, Jack Drury, and Brent Burns.
And then you also have the top 2 teams in the NHL in terms of the standings.
Yes. Again, this was the alternate of what we're trying to propose here. Did they take out the Avs, though? The situation of the Avs did not change. Again, we're just swapping out teams. Is this a simpler path, or is this a harder path? And right now, it seems like we feel like this is a harder path going through the West than it was the East, at least early on.
It would have been tougher, definitely coming out of the the Central Division pod, which had Minnesota Wild, Dallas Stars, and Colorado. But I mean, Utah and Anaheim are both good teams. If you want to go
young, fast teams,
the overall takeaway for me when it comes to arguments about easy path or whatever in the playoffs, and when it's 7-game series like this in the NHL, it's very different from like the NFL playoffs, right? Like there's conversation about like the New England Patriots this last year and their path through the playoffs. You only have to play 1 game, and there's a little more variance there, and what have you with all of that. But when it comes to the NHL playoffs, like with the 82-game sample size in the regular season, it's going to 84 next season. For those of you who are not aware,
2 extras.
It's going to start. Season's going to start in late September now. Everybody's good when you get to the NHL playoffs. And this is something that Rod Brindamore always said in terms of like matchups too, like within the game, like line matching. Like everybody's good when you get to the playoffs. And if you want to say that one team's path is a little bit easier through the playoffs than another, like you're entitled to that opinion. But to me, I think the difference is pretty negligible once you get past like the first round. And it was unique because of the stupid playoff format the NHL has, where the Philadelphia Flyers, were a second-round opponent for the Hurricanes. They probably should have been first round based on just pure points. If it was a 1 through 8,
just tie
like it used
everybody.
To be. Everybody's good.
Overtime, baby.
And if you think the path was easier for Carolina, it's because they earned that path by being the best team in the Eastern Conference during the regular season. That's the whole point of stocking up all those points during the regular season, is to give yourself a more favorable path. Do I think the teams that Vegas faced through their playoff run were maybe a little bit stronger? Sure. But they're all strong teams when it comes to the playoffs. They're all good. Everybody's good. And then even if you think the paths were different, they still have to play against each other in the Stanley Cup final. And if a team is in the Stanley Cup final, they're going to be pretty darn good to have won 12 games at that point and to get to that stage. So, I mean, I think this conversation in general is a little bit silly. Again, I think maybe the teams were a little bit better that Vegas faced, but when you factor in all the injuries and you factor in how good you have to be to get to that final stage, I think ultimately it's immaterial. It doesn't really matter all that much.
So let me put a bow on this one by saying where this starts from and the fact that it had continued. Matthew to his brother Brady on their sit down with each other yesterday, as he's making his point that the Canes had the easier path, he goes, no offense, Brady, but the Canes had an easier path. I was like, oh, wow.
No offense, they had an easier path by beating you 4 games in a row.
No offense. I love that one. Hey, I didn't, listen, hey, no hard feelings, brother, but, yeah, wow. A little shade. I did appreciate that.
I'm Max Goren with 3 things you need to know right now from 99.9 The Fan. UNC baseball will play for the national championship this weekend. The Tar Heels defeated West Virginia 12-7 yesterday to advance to the College World Series finals. Game 1 of the best-of-3 series against the Oklahoma Sooners will be on Saturday night at 8 o'clock. The first round of the U.S. Open is underway from Shinnecock Hills Golf Club in Tuckahoe, New York today. World number 1 Scottie Scheffler is looking to complete the career Grand Slam and add his 5th major victory with a win this week. Stay tuned to 99.9 The Fan for updates from golf's toughest test all tournament long, teed up by McConnell Golf. We are 1 week into the FIFA World Cup, and the second round of group stage games begins today. It's another full day of soccer with 4 games across groups A and B starting at noon. Updates from soccer's biggest stage on 99.9 The Fan are brought to you by NC Courage and Wake Orthopedics. For all the latest news on your favorite teams, download the 99.9 The Fan app or visit 999thefan.com.
good news is it won't be as hot on Saturday for the Canes Stanley Cup Championship Parade, which we will bring coverage to here on 99.9 The Fan. They're telling you to carpool and take the bus if at all possible. I'm assuming at some point, late Friday night, Saturday morning, if whatever weather there is and it clears up and it's not bad, people will start camping out early. So, again, do what you will. And because of that, right now, and the reason why I put this out there is that the city is going to be judged on how this victory parade looks and how it feels. No matter if there are balloons, if there are streamers, if there are horse-drawn buggies, limousines, buses, or whatever it is, it will be a matter of some real hospitality. Let's put it that way. Like, you're going to be packed in. Championships are rare. You've heard me say this many times. You're going to be packed in with people on the sidewalks, in some cases 10 deep. And then when that parade gets to Fayetteville and they've got that stage set up and the TV monitors and the things are set up and you're listening to the speeches and you've got all your pictures and whatnot, you are going to have to preach a lot of patience because the person next to you probably didn't put their deodorant on, probably has put their child on their shoulders, probably is holding up a giant iPad so they can film the video and get shots of it, even though they'll probably be able to watch it back later, but they want to capture that moment. And you will get frustrated and you will get unhappy. And unfortunately, you'll be judged for it. And the judgment that falls upon you will be the judgment that falls upon this city. How well things are organized, how well people look out and about, and certainly what is being presented to you as the Canes roll by you, walk by you, march by you, roll by you, whatever it is. Because today in New York City will be judged on how well it puts on its NBA Champions Parade, in which all the visiting holding pens, and they do have experience in New York with large crowds because of the amount of parades that they already have in the city based on civic and cultural pride, but also they do have this little thing called New Year's Eve there. So Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, New Year's Eve, whatever cultural pride it happens to be, and just New York City in general, they do understand crowds to a certain extent, except the ones that get out of hand. And so I implore you, don't get out of hand. In New York City, they have already closed off the viewing pens. You cannot get onto the parade route anymore. That parade doesn't start for another 90 minutes. Those pens were full 2 hours ago. People going into the city to work, people going into the city for this parade, it's full. New York is full. Like we say, North Carolina is full. Like, hey, we're kind of full. You can stay where you're at, whatever it is. I like new neighbors, by the way. But New York will be judged today on how well that goes. And people will still complain. And people will still put their children on their shoulders. And people will still tape off things on the sidewalks. And people will still put up their chairs well beforehand. It happens in every championship city. But you will be judged for it. Fairly or not, you will be judged on either how well the parade goes or how well you behave or how well this entire event is put on. And my fingers crossed that everyone has dotted their lowercase j's and crossed their t's.
Yeah, and apparently they're anticipating roughly 100,000 people coming to Raleigh for the parade on Saturday. For reference, the Raleigh Christmas Parade, which goes along largely the same route that's planned for Saturday. I think it drew like 65,000 or something this past year. So bigger numbers than that, significantly bigger numbers than the last Stanley Cup celebration for the Hurricanes in 2006, which is outside the arena.
I've seen the pictures.
That drew about 30,000, so we're looking at least probably 3 times that if this estimated crowd is correct. I mean, it should be a big event. It should be a lot of fun. Should be tons of people out there celebrating, enjoying. There'll probably be some good antics up there on the stage from the players who are probably still mid-celebration as we speak here, even though it's been 4 days since then. I'd anticipate they keep that party rolling all the way through Saturday. There was a funny post online. It was from a screenshot from Shane Gostisbehere's wife, Gina. Screenshot from her text with Shane Gostisbehere from the golf course. It's like a picture he sent of him and Jordan Martinook, and she sent a text that was like, "Have you been more than 5 feet apart from him since Sunday?" And he's just like, "No." So they're still enjoying themselves. I don't know where they were golfing yesterday with the Stanley Cup, but it looks like they're enjoying every moment of this as they should.
Yeah, absolutely.
As they've earned the right to celebrate, and they're going to get to celebrate with 100,000 plus, likely of their best friends here on Saturday.
The city will, fingers crossed, roll out the red carpet. I implore many of you who will be in and around people who are not used to the area. There are people coming in. We know this. Like, I've seen the posts. I've seen the videos. Hey, we're coming in. Where should we stay? Where should we park? How early should we get there? And it's funny because you're asking people around here, how early should we get to a parade? And the only reference they have really is the Christmas parade. They're like, well, the Christmas parade is, I got to see some dance teams and, some gymnasts and some funny characters and Santa Claus. I'm like, it starts at 10. You get here 9 o'clock. You'll be fine. I'm not sure there's a right or a wrong arrival time or even departure time for this thing. What I can tell you is if we borrow a page out of the World Cup kind of things, you're seeing the out-of-towners come in and everyone is being kind and not muttering, bless your heart, under their breath, I think we'll be okay. I think you'll all be okay, but you will be judged. Just putting that one out there. You will be judged on what happens on Saturday. Again, we'll have complete coverage of the Stanley Cup Championship Parade for you here on 99.9 The Fan. We'll have Canes content starting at 9 o'clock, a pre-parade kind of party with us starting at 10 o'clock from Hillsborough Street. And then when that parade gets underway at 11, you'll be able to listen to us and our witty banter from the sidelines.